Now we move over to Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States of America, where Laurence Freeman, a lover of Nigeria, a friend of Nigeria, is standing by to give us his perspectives on what's happening between the tensions that's happening between Nigeria and the United States of America over, Donald Trump's renewed threat on military intervention over alleged attacks on Christians in Nigeria. Thank you very much, Laurence. Are you on there?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Sorry for keeping you waiting, but you know how it is. We had a very, very important elections, regional elections in Anambra State, and we thought we should give updates to our people. But thank you very much for coming, and we want you to give us your perspective. You say, you are a friend of Nigeria. Can you give us a context? Can you give us the context? Explain the context where, how friendly you are to Nigeria in context.
Well, I first arrived in Nigeria in June of 1994 at Murtala Muhammad Airport in Lagos. And since then, I've probably been to Nigeria maybe 16 times. Most recently, I spoke at a Second International Rail Conference in Abuja in the second week of September. I also collaborated with President Buhari on refurbishing Lake Chad, a project I have for many years called Trans Aqua, to refurbish the dying lake. And he and I and others organized a conference in Abuja in 2018 in February. So I've been very active in defending the sovereignty of Nigeria and other nations and promoting infrastructure, economic development as a primary driver for achieving sovereignty and economic growth. So I know Nigeria well. I've probably been to a third of your states, and I have many friends all over the country, including in the military and government. So I think I'm qualified to make some comments about my second country outside the United States, Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Well, apropos of that, you must have noticed that over the past few months or so, there have been some tensions between Nigeria and the United States over allegations or attacks on Christians in Nigeria. And there was the order of events or developments was that there were reports from Nigeria, to the United States, to certain selected people in the United States, and then it was followed by, bill presented to the Senate of the United States over the issues of attacks on Christians, and by Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, and then subsequently the declaration of Nigeria as a country of particular concern by President Donald Trump. And even before the ink had dried on that, the next thing we had was that President Trump was going to, attack Nigeria, or rather, attack Nigeria. This must have really made you quite apprehensive, isn't it?
Yes, it did. The fact of the matter is that, unfortunately, the Western nations, the political economic institutions, we might call the oligarchy, they consider themselves to be the rulers of how countries should behave. They go by the name, I'm sure you're familiar, the rules-based international order. And they believe in this very dangerous ideology called a zero-sum game, that the world is fixed and the key to superpower hegemony is to be more powerful than the next country. So you have to be on top and your foot has to be on the throat of everybody below you. And unfortunately, this mentality, which has governed much of the thinking of previous Democratic presidents, such as Biden and Obama and others, has also unfortunately inculcated President Trump as well. So they feel that Africa is part of their game, if you will, zero-sum game, to control Africa, control countries, control governments, or at least force them to bend to the will of the Western financial political institutions and to counter China. At all costs, China must not be more powerful than the West. So this is the background
I get a
of
sense
how
that,
the United States looks at Nigeria.
I get a sense, Mr. Laurence, that what you're saying is that Trump's action or intended action on Nigeria is not just about Christians. He himself is not known to be such a practicing Christian but that he's using it as a casus belli, so to speak, to achieve some aims that are not really in favor of Christians, but just to further the interests of some groups in America. Because definitely these are questions that I put across. These are issues that I put across regarding what is happening or his tensions in Nigeria. Can you give us, based on your own experience in Nigeria and also an insider in Washington, D.C., where you are now, can you really unpack this for us?
Sure. What Trump has picked up is that he, in his image as a MAGA leader and strongman candidate, he realizes that his base depends on him supporting their outlook. So the evangelical Christian, or elements of it in the United States, have now said that Nigeria is persecuting, murdering, and committing genocide against Christians. I see no evidence of this from my time in Nigeria or any other evidence, but it's an important part of Trump's base. He doesn't actually understand Christianity. Many of the evangelical Christians don't believe in Christianity. They certainly don't treat people the way Jesus would have treated them. And therefore, some of the statements that Trump has made, he says we have to defend the great Christian movement. And we have to stop the Christians from dying in Nigeria. He doesn't say we have to stop all people from dying in Nigeria, or we have to stop the Christians and the Muslims from dying. So he is capitalizing or appeasing the base. We see with Congressman Riley, we see with Ted Cruz, we see with others in Washington and throughout the country. And he feels if he does not put himself forward in this image of defending Christians, he's going to lose part of his MAGA support. And of course, the Republican Party and Trump are losing already part of the MAGA support. We saw that in the election on Tuesday. But you raise an interesting point. Does he really care about Christians? Well, then what about all the Christians who died in Gaza from bombs that were supplied by the United States? Or what about Christians who are suffering in the United States economically because of his policies? So in my mind, it's a completely bogus issue that is being used to make it appear that Trump is taking this section of his constituency and supporting them. And then, of course, it has the added implications of trying to undermine the sovereignty and independence of Nigeria. I mean, Nigeria has many, many problems. There is a horrible security situation. There are way too many people living in poverty. All these issues have to be addressed. But if you don't address the fundamental issue of improving the life of people, improving their standard of living, promoting policies of development and economic growth, then you're actually responsible for those people suffering and dying from lack of physical, material needs that you need to have for life and for raising a family. And Trump, like the Democrats too, don't care about improving the standard of living of Africans. This is not anything they're concerned about. The United States and the rules-based order have lost any commitment to development, to improving life. And therefore, for me, what they're saying is rather obscene and disgusting, because they're pretending to help people, but they're not helping them at all.
I will take you back to the report, rather, by Congressman Scott Perry sometime early this year about the investigations into the funding by USAID, United States Agency for International Development. And he reported, as the head of the team, that they found out, that's his team, have found out that some of the funding of the USAID was going to groups like among with Boko Haram, and we know what Boko Haram is one of the focal points of the Trump action, or intended Trump action in Nigeria. And he found that USAID was funding Boko Haram activities in Nigeria. Now, if that was true, and it has been established as true, why then is Trump not looking at that direction? Why is he just looking at one direction? Because if we look at it clearly, United States is culpable, really, in financing the activities of Boko Haram, which is now the basis, or part of the basis, for Trump's action or intended actions on Nigeria. So how can Trump reconcile this? Can you tell us about what you feel, your perspective?
Well, I've not personally, I've not seen the evidence that Senator Perry has, and I don't know that actually USAID was funding Boko Haram. I've come across USAID because I've been in Africa for almost 40 years, many times, and part of their programs are useless and counterproductive and dangerous. They do support various organizations that are part of a soft regime change policy that represent no interest to the population, so-called governance campaigns or democracy campaigns or religious campaigns. The thing that USAID did, which was important, was provided food and emergency medical relief, and that was helpful. But USAID never really had no intention of developing any of the countries that it was involved in. And therefore, it was not an effective organization. I don't have any evidence at all they supported Boko Haram. But it's well known in Nigeria and around the world, Boko Haram is no longer considered a, quote, Islamic religious organization. They're criminals, they're bandits, they're part of the ransoms, they're part of the killings that go on against Muslims and Christians. They contribute nothing to the promotion of Islam. And people are drawn to them, in many cases sign up because they can make some money and get paid, because poverty is so bad in Nigeria. I was in the Lake Chad Basin Commission. I was made a member of it, and I was at Lake Chad, and you could see how people were living. And so the young people say, well, I'm not going to end up like my parents. I'm going to find a way to make some money. And Boko Haram and the other extremist groups are essentially ways to make money in carrying out criminal activity. I don't think there's any legitimate connection to Islam at this point.
Okay, well, let me just ask you this. Do you really, living there in Washington, D.C., with all the political groups and all that, and all the talk about whether this is going to happen, because there's a storm of discussions in the United States about really whether Trump is really going to carry out his intention in Nigeria, to bomb Nigeria or to invade Nigeria, as he's saying a lot of things at the same time. Is he really going to do it, or is it just for the optics, or whether he wants to shore up his political status and the status of his party in the political stakes in America? Does he really want to attack Nigeria? And what will he do in doing this? Is he going to bomb some parts of Nigeria, or is he going to put boots on ground, or what? Can you give us a feeling or a sense of that?
Well, Trump is now officially, as he did earlier in his first administration, and as the Biden administration did, they declared Nigeria a country of particular concern. And this enables them to, one, implement sanctions against Nigeria, and two, cut off aid. So even short of a military involvement, I believe the United States gives Nigeria about $1 billion in aid and could impose sanctions. So that already will harm the people of Nigeria. As far as a military action, there will be no boots on the ground if it were to occur. And I'm really not sure that that will occur, although with Trump you never know. But if there was military action to occur in Nigeria, it would be a horrendous act, and it would backfire on the Trump administration because it would galvanize the rest of Africa behind Nigeria. It would galvanize the BRICS behind Nigeria. It would galvanize the whole global South, because this would be a major violation of Nigeria's sovereignty as the largest nation and potentially a great leader for the nation, for the African continent. Now, when you start military activity, kinetic warfare, you then open up a whole potential of disasters. And with Trump's intervention, put him in the same league as President Obama, who destroyed Northern Africa, who essentially helped Boko Haram grow and AQIM grow by overthrowing Gaddafi in October 2011, 14 years ago. Would Trump's actions reproduce that same effect throughout West Africa? It's possible. So it would be the stupidest, foolish move that Trump has done. And I don't think it will occur. But because I think he's a little bit unstable mentally, I think there is a potential that it could occur. And we have to do everything we can now to prevent it from occurring by proposing solutions and alternate policies, such as promoting policies of economic growth for Nigeria, which would eliminate much of the poverty, which fuels much of the violent extremism.
So, it's a two double-barrel question. How would Americans react to Trump's, direct involvement in Nigeria by way of, bombing, and how would you recommend to the Nigerian government, Nigerian people, to get out of this, this crosshairs that the Trump administration has kept on Nigeria?
Well, first of all, the American people know very, very little about the outside world, and they know even less about Africa. So this would be, unfortunately, not the most disruptive to the American people, but it would to the rest of the world. It would be a moral, political crime for the United States to take military action against a nation such as Nigeria. So this is something that is unacceptable. And at some point, the American people will rise up and start objecting to these various military campaigns, including his announced regime change campaign in Venezuela, to bombing ships in the Caribbean without legal justification, to his attacks on the Iran nuclear facility. So you have a crescendo building up of illegal military actions that Trump is taking, and this one against Nigeria could well be the tipping point. As far as Nigeria's actions, they have to maintain a strong commitment to their own sovereignty, and they should reach out to the rest of the global South and the rest of their allies to get support for their sovereignty, and they have to get on top of the security situation, which is very bad. I mean, I've been subject to it myself when I'm over there. But the way to deal with the security situation, which is mass killings of Christians and Muslims, I don't know how the military bombs are going to know which is which. Nigeria should propose joint, effective action against the violent extremists, which the United States has not done. And Nigeria should propose economic cooperation for actually raising the material standing of its people and reducing poverty. These are two positive actions that the Nigerian government should propose to the U.S. government and build up their own strength and support from their allies around the world. So if an action was taken, which would be terrible, the Trump and the rules-based order would suffer the greatest penalty in response.
Thank you. With that candid perspective from Laurence Freeman, all the way from Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States, where all these actions are being contemplated against Nigeria, we wrap up Sunday Politics this week. And thank you very much, Mr. Laurence Freeman, for joining us here, for giving us your perspective on this. Daily Politics returns tomorrow. On behalf of the team, I'm Ilyas Ugadu. Thanks for watching and bye for now. Thank you very much for watching.